power corrupts, but in the case of Julius Caesar, power didn't just corrupt. It terrified the Roman elite. He was a hero to the people, a brilliant general, and a political genius. Yet despite his popularity, his life ended with 23 stab wounds from the very men he once called colleagues. Why did the Roman Senate hate him so much? What pushed them to murder the most powerful man in Rome? Let's rewind. Julius Caesar didn't just appear as a dominant figure overnight. He climbed his way up through a broken political system filled with corruption, ambition, and constant backstabbing. By forming the first triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus, Caesar leveraged power strategically. But when Crassus died and Pompey turned against him, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, literally igniting a civil war that would change Rome forever. After defeating Pompey, Caesar returned not just as a victor, but as a man with unrivaled control. The Senate granted him more and more power, but each new title made them more uneasy. When he was declared dictator for life, alarm bells went off. It was a term Rome hadn't heard in century sand. It sounded far too much like monarchy. Then came the reforms. Caesar slashed debts, redistributed land to veterans, expanded the Senate with loyal supporters, and even reformed the calendar. To the people, these were bold, even revolutionary moves. But to the Senate, this was a nightmare. Every reform chipped away at their influence, their control, and the delicate balance of the Republic. What truly set them off, though, was Caesar's image. Statues, coins with his face, even a throne in the Senate House. These weren't the actions of a humble servant of the Republic. These were the markings of a king. And Rome had a deep-rooted hatred of kingship. The very foundation of the Republic was built on resisting monarch. There was fear not just that Caesar had too much power, but that he would pass it on. Rumors swirled that he wanted to name himself king, maybe even appoint an heir. That was unacceptable. The Senate believed they were guardians of liberty, and if they didn't act, Caesar would end the Republic permanently. The personal dynamics added fuel to the fire. Many senators owed their positions, and even their wealth, to Caesar's goodwill. They felt humiliated by their dependence on him. Men like Brutus and Cassius weren't just patriots, they were once friends of Caesar, torn between loyalty and fear. This wasn't just politics, it was betrayal wrapped in ambition and desperation. Public displays became theatrical. Caesar wore the purple robe of royalty. He was offered a crown by Mark Antony in front of a crowd twice and refused it both times. But to the Senate, that display was not reassuring. It felt like a rehearsal, a test to gauge public reaction. And every cheer from the people was another stab to the Senate's pride and power. The tipping point came when Caesar began to bypass Senate traditions entirely. He filled the Senate with his allies, dismissed procedures, and signed laws unilaterally. Rome's political structure was cracking, and the senators saw themselves not just as sidelined but erased. In their eyes, it was no longer a question of if Caesar would become kingit, was when. So they plotted. In secret, they passed daggers from hand to hand, whispering of liberty and fate. Led by Brutus, Cassius, and over 60 senators, they struck on the Ides of the 4th of March 4 BCE. Caesar fell at the foot of a statue of Pompeius, old rival with his blood staining the floor. He reportedly uttered, "Et tu, Brute," as one of his closest allies joined the ambush. They believed they were saving Rome, but they miscalculated the people's response. The streets filled not with joy, but with grief and rage. The conspirators fled, hunted, and hated. And into the vacuum stepped Caesar's heir Octavian. The irony is chilling. The Senate's attempt to prevent tyranny directly ushered in an era of emperors. The very institution meant to protect Roman liberty became the launching pad for authoritarian rule. Caesar's assassination wasn't the end of a dictatorate, it was the end of the Republic. But maybe the Senate's fear wasn't entirely unjustified. Caesar had centralized power like no one before. He blurred the lines between democracy and dictatorship. So, why did the Senate hate Julius Caesar? Because he embodied a threat they couldn't contain. He redefined power in Rome, centralized it, personalized it, and symbolized it in himself. His very existence challenged their authority, their traditions, and their belief in a shared republic, and in trying to destroy the threat, they unintentionally validated it. Julius Caesar wasn't just a man. He was a turning point, a symbol of a republic's limits and a prelude to an empire's rise. If this kind of history fascinates you, hit that like button, subscribe, and explore more stories from the ancient world right here.